Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/EntitledPeople. Today we have one more set of great stories for you to enjoy. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Payday for Heyday. This is my father's story, but I love it. My father was kind of a part-time farmer, meaning he came home from his 9-to-5 job and went on working on the land we owned. But as he got older, he got rid of the livestock, sheep, and just made hay in the summer. We have a few meadows and they need to be tended, and he sells it. He's now in his mid-70s and still going. He's also a hunter, and where I live we have a very strict weapon control, so if you want to hunt, you have to work hard for it and prove that you're a responsible person who can be trusted with a weapon and will not do harm to the animal, meaning killing the prey with the first shot in the right place so that it wouldn't suffer. About 20 years ago, it was time for haymaking. He was out all week turning the hay, driving from one meadow to the other, and finally the day came to press the hay into bales. He got them all in our barn but for one meadow, so he left the bales there overnight to collect them the next day. He'd done that for a lot of years and never had anything happen. This year was different. When he got to the meadow the next day, the bales were gone. He was mad. The monetary loss was accessible, but all the work he put in, it bugged him. He thought about who could have done it. For all the bales, the thief must have had a trailer for a tractor and couldn't have driven too far. My father thought about it, and the only person he could think of stealing the hay was Joe. Joe was a nice guy, but you had to be careful in his surroundings. He made odd jobs for cash, solid work, good quality, but he was also known for some minor criminal activities like theft, often from farmers and hunters. Small scams, also for poaching. He preferred the fast money before hard work. So my dad drove to Joe's property a little outside of town and got out of the car. Joe wasn't anywhere to be seen, but a litter of about 8-week-old Weimaraner puppies ran towards my father. Weimaraner are a hunting dog breed, and Joe had 2 female Weimaraner who he would breed with. Of course, he didn't have papers for them. No sane dog breeder club would have taken Joe, and he wouldn't care all the regulations and costs. For those who don't know the breed, Weimaraner are top hunting dogs. Very pretty, but very expensive. Even without papers, he'd make good money with the litter. Joe took care of them, got them to the vet when needed, but if you wanted to have a dog with a family tree, this backdoor breeder was the wrong address. He was also very strict. For him, they were tools and not family members. So my dad took a good look at the puppies and took one up when Joe showed up. My father looked at him and told him, "I like this dog. I'm taking her. What do you want for it?" Joe smiled and told him the price. My father put the dog on the passenger seat, turned to Joe and said, "You can deduct the dog from my hay, or we can call the police." Joe went pale and said, "Oh, that was your hay?" My father had been dead right with his gut feeling, who the culprit was. He said nothing more, got in the car, and drove off. The dog was worth more than the hay, but Joe never asked for the rest of the money. He was just happy my dad didn't call the police. What we didn't know at the time was Joe was out on probation, and he would have gone back to prison for this. But we know that if Joe knew the hay was my father's, he would have never touched it. My father was one of the few who treated him always fair and respectful as he did with everyone. The hay incident was never mentioned again between them, and even after that, my father kept his relationship distant with Joe, but never left him alone on our property. He knew how to handle Joe. And our next story. Just as you said, Chief. This happened 2 years or so ago. I'm a project manager in a multinational furniture firm. We do a lot of contract jobs, hotels, offices, resorts, etc., mostly in Europe, but with some overseas contracts every now and then. In that particular job, I was working in the U.S., supplying furniture for a private business center. I was there to supervise installation of our goods and to ensure that everything went smooth from delivery to installation. At the beginning, the general contractor, GC, was great. The GC's fitters were, contrary to any expectation in previous experience, skilled and cooperative. The project was just 1 week or so behind schedule, pretty common, and recovery plans were already in place to meet the deadlines. Everything was going great. One of our shipments, the only one yet to arrive into the U.S., was held in customs and delayed for a few days due to mistakes in the paperwork. This was definitely our fault, as is common in this kind of project. All the parties were expected to adapt a bit and try to work around similar problems, as long as it doesn't imply excessive delays or costs. This was particularly true there, since the client strongly pressured everyone into collaboration after a subcontractor played some dirty tricks and was let go. Time came to install the wall units on Room 2. The project consisted of 8 main rooms and several secondaries, the ones held in customs. No big deal. We discussed with GC the possibility to move ahead with Room 3 instead, but unexpectedly, GC's superintendent firmly refused. He insisted that a delay in installation effectively did not allow him to proceed with the rest. Not true. He claimed GC was due monetary compensation from us for lost working hours and forgiveness for the week-long delay from the client. I was astounded, but client was literally fuming after this meeting. Other subcontractors warned me that the GC superintendent's idea was to blame us for the delay because his boss was asking questions and he needed to take some heat off his own tail. He was also trying to recover some extra money on the project since his team did some mistakes on purchases and he was running over budget. On a subsequent meeting, things became hot between me and the GC soup, with him making a scene about the delay in a very unprofessional way. Luckily, I just got news that the last shipment was ready to deliver in 2 days and told him so. He cut short yelling, "Just deliver your stuff and get the hell out." Now, I was pretty tired of the whole deal. Our job was practically done with the last shipment coming in. I was ready to fly back home in 2 days for a short holiday, and this a-hole deserved a lesson. "You sure, Soup?" "Just do it. We take over from here." "Sure thing, Chief," I replied and cut the meeting short with a fake phone call. On a business lunch, I come to an agreement with the client not to allow the GC to pass any cost on us for this whole situation, since we were evidently not at fault. I asked copies of the transcript of the meeting, got them, and started my plot. Fast forward 2 days. Friday morning, I board a plane for a day-long flight, turn the phone off. I had previously set an out-of-office notice on my email with no backup contacts. While waiting security and boarding, I made some calls taking final agreements with our U.S. logistics partner. Then I was ready for a dozen hours of business-class pampering high above the Atlantic. I landed with over 50 calls from Soup, his boss's boss. A few voicemail messages starting with, "You a-hole," and gradually evolving into a broken voice plead of, "For God's sake, please just stop." You see, the superintendent did not know we had all our goods already delivered and custom cleared, sitting in a warehouse 50 miles out of town. On that Friday morning, he got our stuff delivered. All of it. All at once. Several trucks full of large wooden crates, effectively filling every possible storage space on the site and requiring part of the parking lot for temporary storage. Our logistics was explicitly instructed not to allow any missed delivery and in case just drop crates on the tarmac. I had a truck crane brought in for unloading to speed things up and further state my point that we were not kidding around. All the documents were done with a single bill of lading, so Soup signed unwittingly the single proof of delivery while the first truck was unloading and just before the rest showed up. From then on, to do any real work, he'd have to move around several large crates to free some space. He had full liability for any possible damage and eventually had to pay the landlord a fine for unauthorized use of the parking lot because we had the signed proof of delivery and could prove he accepted the shipment in full. Unplanned but not unwelcome, Saturday night a storm was supposed to hit the area, and he had to scramble to find a warehouse and some trucks to move the crates in a covered space. He had to do most of it in overtime and at his company's expense. Having finished the deliveries, my job was effectively over. Saving a few good $1,000 in future travel expenses, I got thank you messages from several subcontractors who had the chance to bill the GC for the extra time needed to move around the crates. We got some explanations to do toward our client. We discounted from our bill part of the supervision cost as a sign of goodwill, and ultimately he agreed that GC deserved it, and their PM was very collaborative in pushing the blame to GC's Soup. Never heard from that GC or his Soup anymore. And our last story. We're not open yet, lady. I was part of a team that helped set up a brand new hardware store in my small hometown. The construction of the store was about 90% finished. We were in the process of setting up and stocking shelves, creating aisleways, and generally planning the layout of the store. During this time, only about half of the light fixtures were ever running at a time in order to save money during construction. Even though there were checkout lanes constructed, the registers were not yet installed. The only way to enter the building was to manually push open the automatic sliding glass doors at the front of the store. Nobody was required to wear any sort of store uniform. Absolutely nothing about the appearance of this store would hint that we were open for business. So one day I'm stocking some shelves in the home and garden department, and I'm approached by a lady I didn't recognize. We'll refer to this lady as OL for Oblivious Lady. She was carrying a few boxes of stuff in her arms, because we had no carts yet. OL, where's the camping section? Figuring she was just another new employee, I made a small introduction before pointing her to the general location of our camping section. OL, do you mind walking with me? I get lost easily. In hindsight, this should have been my first clue that something wasn't right. On the way there, I noticed that the boxes she was carrying didn't belong in the camping section. Actually, I think that hot plate belongs in the appliance section, I tell her. Yeah, that's where I got it from. Okay, why are you moving it to the camping section? I'm not. I need this stuff for a camping trip. Is the manager okay with that? Who's that? Wait, you work here, right? No, I'm shopping for stuff for my camping trip. We're not open for business yet. But I need this stuff. I don't think you understand. We have no way to sell any of this stuff to you. The grand opening isn't for another week. I've been shopping around for half an hour and nobody told me you weren't open. I need this stuff and now you're telling me I can't purchase it? That's correct. How rude. Hold on, I tell her, let me get my manager. I grab my manager from his office and tell him the story. We find the lady in the camping section pulling items off the barely stocked shelf. Manager, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The store isn't open for business yet, and you're trespassing on our property. I'm just trying to buy stuff for my camping trip. We finally had to walk her to the front of the store and point out that the registers were not even installed. Then we walked her to the sliding glass doors, pushed them open, and told her to have a nice day. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.